Hello, Dr. Roger Elmer again. Today we're going to talk about brain injury. In brief, we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about what it is, and why it is so difficult. It's one of my favorite things to work with because every brain is already different. Imagine that every brain with a brain injury is going to be so much different still. And so, depending upon how it got that injury. The injury to the brain can happen from an actual mechanical insult, which we see a lot. We talk a lot about it with respect to the NFL, hockey. I think that they were probably asking for it, but then I'm the guy who's the martial artist who loves my brain injuries too. So I get where they're coming from. But in terms of other reasons or ways to get brain injuries, we can get them literally from particularly from birth. If we're born with a brain injury, if we have MS, cerebral palsy, post-polio, we could wind up with insult or injury to the brain. We can wind up with a stroke, which is an injury due to having too much blood or too little blood, and that each one of these is an injury to the brain. Now, what is really yucky about brain injury is the fact that not only does it damage tissue, which anything that is dead is not going to be coming back, but it also disrupts the function of whatever's around it, and therefore the function of that system that is at the end of it. So if it has to do with movement systems, or if it has to do with running your kidney, you're going to have a problem with that. The other issue, which is even more distressing, is that once you have an injury, you go through a process of inflammation. Now, inflammation in of itself is not a bad thing. It's really good. It's going to heal us. We want inflammation to happen, but also we want it to resolve so that it's done with healing. The biggest issues that we see today are due to chronic inflammation, which leads to significant degeneration and processes, including cancers. And so we want that inflammation, but we want it to resolve. And inflammation in the brain is disastrous because of the pH changes and it can create its own damage. But also, the cells that created, we talked before about plasticity, and what plasticity means, that the cell can literally learn and grow and do better. Well, the cells that do inflammation are called glial cells. Those cells also learn. We don't call it neuroplasticity, we call it glial priming. In glial priming, the cells are getting better, more adept at expressing inflammation, which means the next time you have something happen, it will activate and more easily and do a higher level of inflammation. So as you go, you can have, if I had some kind of injury to my head, and it created my first brain injury, because it's hypersensitive, it's more easily damaged. I don't even have to have the same vector or the same intensity of the insult to wind up reconcussing it. But also, I don't even have to have a physical injury. I could have something chemical or something hormonal that happens, some emotional event that creates an abnormal neuroendocrine cocktail or hormonal cocktail that creates a stress enough to re-trigger and reconcuss that area. The most common neurotransmitter, excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain, is called glutamate. And that glutamate is, like I say, excitatory. You may have heard of MSG, or monosodium glutamate, and so you have an injury and you go and you're healed from it, but you go eat some Chinese food and you wind up with an abnormal amount of MSG, crosses the blood-brain barrier and reconcusses you. You don't know why. You're all of a sudden walking in a cloud, can't think, completely emotional, and even having suicidal thoughts, which is very common in terms of high-level pugilistic athletes. And that's what the whole movie Concussion was about, in terms of why that happens. So when we talk about brain injury, the things that we do here are to get the process of inflammation. Number one, to get the process of inflammation down, to stop the inflammation, to get it to not just subside, but to resolve, because we want it to finish the healing process. Then we are working with the areas that got injured, which is unique to their concussion and to their own brain. We're working with those areas to restore function to whatever is still alive. Then we're working with other areas of the brain to pick up the workload of that area that didn't. If we've got some of the function that's not functioning, we can work with other areas within the brain to get them to assist or to help out with that workload. But to recap, brain injury, no matter how you got it, is a very disastrous problem, creating all kinds of changes within the brain and making it much more sensitive to future insults, future concussions. And we at Advanced Neurospinal Solutions, we love taking care of these kinds of cases and helping them to resolve their inflammation, helping them to restore function as far as possible within those parts of the brain that are left over, and then to work with other areas of the brain to take up the workload that is lost overall. Thank you very much.